I never thought I'd be that woman, the one sitting in a courtroom watching her life unravel thread by thread. Yet there I was, gripping the edge of my seat as Solomon's lawyer systematically dismantled 15 years of what I thought was a perfect marriage. My name is Reagan, and 6 months ago, I was living what most would consider a charmed life. Executive wife, charity board member, that woman who had it all. Now I'm watching my soon-to-be ex-husband's sister, Ciara, film my humiliation on her phone, probably already crafting the perfect caption for her million followers. Mrs. Turner. The judge's voice cut through my thoughts. The court finds that the prenuptial agreement is valid and enforceable. Solomon didn't even bother hiding his smirk. He sat there in his perfectly tailored suit, looking more like the man I'd met at that charity gala than he had in years. The difference was now I could see through the facade. Your Honor, my lawyer started, but the judge raised his hand. I've made my decision. The agreement clearly states that in the event of infidelity, all jointly acquired assets revert to the injured party. But I never... The words caught in my throat as Solomon's lawyer produced the photos. Photos that I knew were staged, but looked real enough to convince a judge. Me, supposedly in a hotel with our landscaper. The ultimate cliché. Furthermore, the judge continued, the defendant will vacate the marital home within 72 hours. Ciara's phone followed my every move as I left the courthouse. Hey, Reagan, she called out, her voice dripping with false concern. Any comment for my followers? They're dying to know how it feels to go from riches to rags. I kept walking, my heels clicking against the marble floors. Don't cry. Don't give them the satisfaction. Leave her alone, Ciara. Caitlin, my best friend, stepped between us. Haven't you done enough? Oh, please, Ciara laughed. She brought this on herself. Maybe if she'd been a better wife. A better wife? I spun around, surprising even myself with the steadiness in my voice. You mean like looking the other way while your brother emptied our joint accounts? Or maybe I should have ignored the receipts from his business trips to Vegas. Solomon's father, Anthony, appeared behind Ciara. Now, Reagan, there's no need to make a scene. The judge has made his decision. Accept it with grace. Grace? I stepped closer to him. Like the grace you showed when you helped Solomon forge those photos? Or the grace of watching your daughter turn my pain into social media content? You can't prove any of that. Solomon finally spoke, joining his family. It's over, Reagan. You lost. Go home. Oh, wait, it's not your home anymore. They laughed, all three of them standing there in their designer clothes, bought with money that should have been partly mine, laughing at my downfall. I felt Caitlin's hand on my arm, trying to pull me away, but something inside me had snapped. 15 years of playing the perfect wife, of building Solomon's image, of managing his social calendar and smoothing over his family's drama, all of it crystallized into a single moment of clarity. You know what's funny? I said, my voice carrying across the courthouse lobby. You all think this is the end of my story, that without the Turner name, I'm nothing, but you've forgotten something crucial. And what's that? Ciara asked, still recording. I built Solomon's brand. Every connection, every business deal, every social circle. I cultivated those. I made the Turner name mean something in this city. And now? I smiled, feeling lighter than I had in months. Now I get to do it for myself. Good luck with that, Solomon scoffed. You'll be working retail within a month. I adjusted my bag on my shoulder and turned to leave, but not before delivering one final shot. Keep recording, Ciara. This will make excellent content for your follow-up video, the one where you explain how your brother's ex-wife became everything he pretended to be. As Caitlin and I walked out into the bright afternoon sun, I felt something I hadn't expected, hope. They thought they'd stripped me of everything, but they'd actually given me something priceless. Freedom. You okay? Caitlin asked, squeezing my hand. No, I admitted, but I will be. They want to see me fall? Fine. But they better be ready for what happens when I rise. I could still hear Ciara's voice behind us, already spinning the story for her followers. Let her talk. Let them all talk. They thought this was my ending, but they were wrong. This was just my beginning. The key to my new apartment stuck in the lock again. I jiggled it, cursing under my breath as my phone buzzed for the 10th time today. Another message from Ciara's followers, no doubt, telling me how I deserved everything I got. Need help with that? My elderly neighbor, Mrs. Peterson, appeared in the hallway. These locks can be tricky, dear. I've got it, I said, finally forcing the door open. Just need to get used to it. My studio apartment was a far cry from the mansion I'd left behind. A twin bed, a small desk, and a kitchenette that barely fit a mini fridge. But it was mine. No Solomon, no Turners, no pretense. My phone buzzed again. This time it was Caitlin. "Please tell me you're coming to happy hour," she said when I answered. "You can't keep hiding in your apartment forever." "I'm not hiding, I'm working." I glanced at my desk, covered in sketches of eco-friendly fashion designs. Besides, I can barely afford ramen right now, let alone cocktails. "It's on me. No arguments. You need to get out, Reagan. It's been 3 weeks." An hour later, I found myself at our old favorite bar, nursing a glass of house wine while Caitlin showed me the latest social media drama. Can you believe her? Caitlin scrolled through Shira's latest post, a heartfelt video about family loyalty and karma. "She's monetizing your divorce." "Of course she is," I said, taking another sip. "That's what Kira does. Takes other people's pain and turns it into content." The bartender set down 2 more glasses. "These are from the gentleman at the end of the bar." We turned to see a well-dressed man in his 40s raising his glass to us. "That's Franklin Cunningham," Caitlin whispered. "The fashion consultant. What's he doing in this dive?" Before I could respond, Franklin was walking over. "I hope you don't mind the intrusion," he said, but I couldn't help overhearing. "You're Reagan Turner, aren't you?" "Just Reagan now," I corrected him. "And yes, I am. I saw your work at the Thompson Charity Gala last year. Those sustainable fashion pieces you coordinated? Brilliant." I straightened up. "You remember that?" "Hard to forget. The industry needs more people thinking about sustainability. I'm hosting an event next week. Small gathering, just some designers and investors discussing the future of eco-friendly fashion. You should come." My heart raced, but years of dealing with Solomon's business associates had taught me to stay cool. "That's flattering, but I'm not exactly in that world anymore." Franklin pulled out a business card. "The invitation stands. Sometimes losing everything is the best thing that can happen to a creative mind." After he left, Caitlin grabbed my arm. "You're going, right? This is exactly what you need." "I don't have anything to wear," I said, but my mind was already racing with possibilities. "My good clothes are all at the house." "Wear that black dress you grabbed before Solomon changed the locks, the one you designed yourself." My phone buzzed again. This time it was an email from my new job, a sales position at a department store. "I have to work that night." "Call in sick," Caitlin said. "This is your chance, Reagan. While Solomon and his family are busy destroying your reputation, you could be building something new." I stared at Franklin's card, remembering the sketches on my desk. Every night after my shift, I'd stay up drawing, imagining a fashion line that was both sustainable and sophisticated. It had started as therapy, but maybe, what if I fail? I whispered. "They're all waiting for that, you know. Solomon, Kira, Anthony, they're expecting me to crash and burn." "Then give them a show they'll never forget." Caitlin grabbed my phone and pulled up Kira's latest video. "Look at this. 2 million views of her talking about your fall from grace. Imagine their faces when you rise higher than they ever did." Just then, my phone lit up with an unknown number. I answered hesitantly. "Reagan, it's Franklin again. Sorry to call so late, but I forgot to mention, bring some of your sketches to the event. I know people who might be interested." After hanging up, I looked at Caitlin, who was grinning from ear to ear. "The universe is speaking," she said. "Are you going to listen?" I finished my wine and stood up. "I need to go home and work on those sketches." "That's my girl." Caitlin hugged me. "Show them what you're made of." Walking home that night, I felt something I hadn't experienced since before the divorce. Purpose. Solomon might have taken my money, my home, and my social standing, but he couldn't take my talent or my drive. For the first time in months, I couldn't wait for tomorrow. The event venue was exactly the kind of place Solomon used to frequent, all glass walls and modern art. I clutched my portfolio closer, suddenly aware of how out of place I felt in my self-designed dress. "Reagan!" Franklin waved me over to a group of well-dressed industry veterans. "Everyone, this is the designer I was telling you about." "So, you're the sustainable fashion enthusiast." A woman in her 60s extended her hand. "I'm Margaret, editor of Style Forward. Franklin says you have some interesting ideas." I opened my portfolio, hands trembling slightly. "I believe luxury fashion doesn't have to cost the earth. These designs use recycled materials and..." "Innovative," Another voice cut in. But how would you scale it? For the next hour, I found myself in detailed discussions about production methods, material sourcing, and market potential. The nervousness faded as I spoke about my passion project. You've clearly thought this through, Margaret said, examining my sketches, but starting a fashion line requires significant capital. I'm aware, I admitted. I'm currently saving up from my retail job. A burst of familiar laughter from across the room made me freeze. Ciara was here, hanging on the arm of some investor, her phone permanently attached to her hand. Isn't that Solomon Turner's sister? Someone whispered. The social media influencer? Franklin noticed my discomfort. Ignore her. Focus on this instead. He handed me a business card. Sarah's looking for fresh talent for her sustainable fashion incubator program. Full funding, mentorship, the works. Before I could respond, Kiara spotted me. Her eyes widened in recognition, then narrowed with calculated precision. Reagan, what a surprise. Her voice carried across the room. Everyone, this is my former sister-in-law. You know, the one from my videos? The room grew quiet. I could feel the stares, the judgment, the assumptions. Actually, Franklin stepped forward. Reagan was just sharing her innovative approach to sustainable luxury fashion. Margaret, why don't you tell everyone about what you were saying regarding her market analysis? Margaret smiled. Gladly, it's refreshing to see someone tackle sustainability without compromising sophistication. Reagan, that dress you're wearing, you designed it? Yes, I said, finding my voice. It's made entirely from recycled materials. Recycled? Kiara snickered. How appropriate. Speaking of recycling, how's the department store job? It's teaching me valuable lessons about what customers really want, I replied smoothly, something your brother never understood. The crowd murmured appreciatively. Tira's smile faltered. Ladies, Franklin interrupted, let's keep things professional. Reagan, why don't you show everyone your concept for biodegradable packaging? As I presented my ideas, I noticed people actually taking notes. Margaret asked detailed questions about production costs. Even Ciara's investor friends seemed interested. This could work, Margaret announced. With the right backing and guidance, you could be on to something significant. But she has no experience running a business, Kira protested. My brother always handled that side of things. Your brother? An older gentleman laughed. Isn't he the one who just lost his family's fortune in that failed resort development? Kira's face reddened. That's just temporary setback. Speaking of which, someone else chimed in. Did you see the news about Turner Industries laying off staff? I hadn't heard this. While I'd been focused on my designs, apparently Solomon's world had been crumbling. Reagan, Franklin pulled me aside as conversations buzzed around us. Sarah loved your presentation. She wants you in the incubator program. Full funding starting next month. My heart stopped. Are you serious? Completely. This is your chance. Take it. Across the room, Kiara was frantically typing on her phone, probably crafting some spin about the evening. But for once, I didn't care. When do I start? I asked. We'll need you full-time. Can you leave the retail job? I thought about my tiny apartment, my stuck door, my ramen dinners. Then I thought about Solomon's smirk in the courtroom, Kiara's mocking videos, Anthony's condescension. Yes, I said firmly. I can start whenever you need me. As I left the event that night, my phone buzzed with a notification. Kiara had posted a new video, running into my ex-sister-in-law at a fashion event. So awkward. But underneath her post was a comment from Margaret. Excited to see what this talented young designer does next. Watch this space. Sustainable fashion. I smiled, thinking of Solomon watching these posts, realizing that his attempt to destroy me had only set me free. My phone buzzed again. A text from Franklin with details about the incubator program. This wasn't just an opportunity. It was a beginning. And somewhere in the city, in their rapidly shrinking world, the Turners were about to learn that karma had a wicked sense of timing. Eco-elegance is more than a fashion brand, I told the reporter from Vogue. It's a movement. Every piece tells a story of renewal and resilience. 6 months after the incubator program, I sat in my new office, surrounded by mood boards and sustainable fabric samples. The interview is going live tomorrow, along with our first major collection launch. One last question. The reporter leaned forward. Your ex-husband's family was quite prominent in the fashion scene. Has their recent financial situation affected your perspective on success? Before I could answer, Caitlin burst in. Reagan, you need to see this. She held up her phone, showing Kiara's latest Instagram livestream. My former sister-in-law's perfectly maintained facade was cracking. And yes, the rumors are true. Kiara's voice trembled. Turner Industries is filing for bankruptcy, but this is just a temporary setback. Our family has weathered worse. I'm sorry, I told the reporter, but I need to handle something. Would you mind if we wrapped up? After she left, Caitlin turned up the volume. Their main investors pulled out, she explained. Something about Solomon's gambling debts coming to light. Reagan? My assistant poked her head in. Franklin's on line 1. He says it's urgent. I picked up the phone. Franklin, I was just about to call you. Have you seen the news? The Turners are finished. Anthony's having a fire sale of their assets. But that's not why I'm calling. Sierra's been trying to reach you. What? She showed up at my office an hour ago, asking for your contact information. Said something about making amends. I laughed. Now she wants to make amends? After months of mocking videos? Just thought you should know. By the way, early orders for eco-elegance are through the roof. The sustainable fashion forums can't stop talking about you. After hanging up, I pulled up the financial news on my computer. The headlines were brutal. Turner Empire crumbles. Social media dynasty faces financial ruin. Solomon Turner's Vegas losses sink family business. Ms. Reagan? My assistant appeared again. There's someone here to see you. Says she's family. Send her in. Ciara walked in, looking nothing like her polished social media persona. Her designer outfit was from last season, her makeup slightly smudged. Reagan, she started. Save it, I cut her off. Whatever sob story you're planning to monetize, I'm not interested. It's not like that, Kiara's voice cracked. Everything's falling apart. Solomon's gambling, Dad's health, our reputation. I thought maybe, since you're doing so well. You thought what? That I'd help the people who tried to destroy me? Did you forget about the courtroom, the videos, the lies? I was wrong, okay? Tears streaked her makeup. I was jealous. You were always better than us. Smarter, more talented. Solomon knew it too. That's why he... Why he what? Why he set you up. The photos, the prenup, all of it. He knew you'd outshine him eventually. My phone buzzed. Another news alert. Turner Industries stock had hit rock bottom. Please, Kiara whispered. I need your help. Just a small investment to tide us over. Get out. Reagan, I said get out. I stood up. You didn't care about my dignity when you were filming those videos. You didn't worry about my future when you helped Solomon destroy my reputation. And now you want my help? You're heartless, she spat, her vulnerability vanishing. After everything our family did for you? Your family? I laughed. Your family took everything from me and called it karma. Well, guess what? Karma works both ways. As security escorted her out, my phone lit up with a text from Margaret. Just saw the advance copy of your Vogue interview. Brilliant work. The industry needs more voices like yours. Caitlin hugged me. You okay? Better than okay, I said, watching Kiara's retreating figure through the glass walls. For the first time, I feel truly free. My assistant returned with a stack of papers. The eco-friendly textile suppliers are ready to sign, and the sustainable packaging designs are finalized. Perfect. I signed the contracts, each signature feeling like another step away from my past. Oh, and Ms. Reagan, the building manager called. The Turner's old office space is available for lease. Should I schedule a viewing? I looked around my current office, already too small for our growing team. The irony of taking over their former space wasn't lost on me. Book it, I said. It's time for some renovation. As I watched the sunset over the city skyline, I thought about Solomon's smirk in that courtroom. He'd tried to write my ending, but instead, he'd only written his own. And mine? Mine was just beginning. And that's how eco-elegance became the fastest-growing sustainable fashion brand in North America, I concluded, standing on the TED Talk stage. From a tiny apartment and broken dreams to this, proof that rock bottom can be your foundation. The applause was deafening. As I walked off stage, Franklin met me with a proud smile. Brilliant speech. The part about rising from adversity, pure gold. Thanks for pushing me to do this, I said, checking my phone. 3 missed calls from an unknown number. Reagan, a reporter rushed over. Quick question. Any response to Solomon Turner's recent interview about your success? My head snapped up. What interview? He's claiming he always believed in your potential. Says the divorce was actually his way of pushing you to achieve greatness. I laughed, but before I could respond, my assistant Julia appeared. Sorry to interrupt, but there's something you need to see. In the green room, she pulled up a video on her tablet. Solomon sat in what looked like a budget hotel room, his once immaculate appearance notably disheveled. Of course I'm proud of Reagan, he was saying. I always knew she had it in her. Sometimes people need a push to reach their full potential. Turn it off, I said quietly. Has anyone tracked his location? Las Vegas, Julia replied. He's been banned from most casinos there. Apparently, he's been trying to convince investors to help him start a rival sustainable fashion brand. Franklin snorted. Good luck with that. Your patents and trademarks are bulletproof. My phone buzzed again. The same unknown number. This time, I answered. Reagan? It was Anthony, Solomon's father. Please don't hang up. What do you want? To apologize and to warn you. Solomon's not well. He's been making threats, saying he'll expose some secret about your company. There are no secrets, I said firmly. Unlike your family's business, mine is completely transparent. He's desperate. We all are. The bankruptcy, the scandal. Kira's lost all her sponsorships. I'm selling my house. And this concerns me because we're family. No, I cut him off. We stopped being family when you helped Solomon frame me for infidelity. Remember that, Anthony? The line went quiet. Then, we never meant for things to go this far. Funny how karma works, isn't it? After hanging up, I turned to Franklin. We need to prepare for whatever Solomon's planning. Already on it, he said. Our PR team is ready for any scenario. But Reagan, there's something else you should know. The old Turner building, their remaining staff is being evicted next week. I walked to the window, looking out at the city skyline. How many employees? About 50. Most of them had nothing to do with what happened to you. Get me their resumes, I said after a moment. The good ones might deserve a second chance. Not the Turners, but their staff. They shouldn't suffer for their boss's mistakes. Julia cleared her throat. Speaking of second chances, there's a letter for you, hand-delivered. The envelope was expensive, the handwriting familiar. Inside was a single page. Dear Reagan, I know I don't deserve your time or attention. My videos, my mockery, my cruelty. I can't take any of it back. But I'm writing because Solomon is spiraling. He's been talking about confronting you, about exposing something. I don't know what he's planning, but I'm worried he might hurt himself or others. I'm not asking for money or help. Just be careful. Kiara P.S. Your TED Talk made me cry. You really did rise from the ashes we created. What do you want to do? Caitlin asked, reading over my shoulder. Schedule a meeting with security, I told Julia, and call our lawyers. If Solomon's planning something, we need to be ready. And Kira's warning? I folded the letter carefully. Keep it, might be useful someday. My phone lit up with another notification. Eco-Elegance's stock had hit a new high. Outside, workers were installing our logo on what used to be the Turner building. You know what's ironic? I said to Caitlin. They thought they were burying me. Instead, they planted a seed. And now they want to harvest what you've grown, she replied. Too bad for them, I smiled, watching our logo illuminate against the darkening sky. This garden isn't for sale. Julia appeared again. Your car's ready. And Reagan, Solomon's been spotted at the airport. He's flying in tomorrow. Perfect, I said, gathering my things. Let him come. I'm not that scared woman in the courtroom anymore. What are you going to do? Franklin asked. What I do best, I replied. Turn his poison into power. The unknown number called again. This time, I let it ring. They're here. Valeria, my HR director, poked her head into my office. All three of them. They're in the lobby for the open interviews. I looked up from my laptop. They don't know this is my company? Apparently not. Solomon looks rough. Kira's not filming for once, and Anthony can barely make eye contact with anyone. Caitlin, who'd been reviewing our quarterly reports, sat up straight. Are you really going to interview them? No, I replied, standing up. But I am going to watch. The security feed showed them sitting in our sleek lobby, surrounded by Eco-Elegance's latest campaign photos, all featuring sustainable luxury wear and empowering messages about rising above adversity. Your 9 a.m. is here too, Julia reminded me. The investors from Paris? Reschedule them. This is more important. I took the private elevator down to the observation room adjacent to the lobby. Through the one-way glass, I could see Solomon fidgeting with his frayed shirt cuff. Kiara kept checking her reflection in her phone, while Anthony stared at the floor. "Ms. Reagan?" Valeria's voice came through my earpiece. "Should I begin their interviews?" "One at a time. Start with Solomon." Valeria called his name, and I watched my ex-husband follow her to the interview room. Through the audio feed, I heard every word. "Your resume shows extensive business experience," Valeria began, "but there's a significant gap in recent months." "Personal matters," Solomon mumbled. "But I'm ready to rebuild. I have valuable industry connections." "Had," Valeria corrected. "According to our research, most of your former contacts have aligned with eco-elegance." Solomon's face darkened. "That company, they stole my ideas. My ex-wife. Is there something you'd like to share about eco-elegance's founder?" "She's a fraud," he exploded. "I made her what she is. Without me, she'd be nothing." "Thank you for your time," Valeria said smoothly. "We'll be in touch." Kiara was next. She'd attempted to recreate her former polished look, but her designer bag was an obvious knockoff. "Your social media experience is impressive," Valeria noted, "though your recent engagement metrics show a significant decline." "I'm rebranding," Kiara said quickly, moving away from luxury lifestyle content to more authentic stories. "Like mocking divorce victims?" Kiara paled. "You've seen those videos? I can explain." "No need. Next, please." Anthony walked in last, his shoulders hunched. "I know what this looks like," he started. "Three members of a failed family business, begging for work." "Mr. Turner," Valeria interrupted, "why do you want to work here specifically?" "Because," he paused, "because eco-elegance represents everything we should have been. Innovation, integrity, real value." I'd heard enough. "Send them to the executive conference room," I told Valeria through the earpiece. All three. Minutes later, I walked into the conference room. The looks on their faces were priceless. "Reagan?" Solomon stood up. This is your company?" "Surprise," I said, sitting at the head of the table. "Though if you'd been paying attention to business news instead of gambling, you'd have known that." "We didn't come here for games," Anthony started. "No, you came here because you're desperate, because every other company in the industry has blacklisted you, because your reputation is toxic." Chera wiped away a tear. "Please, Reagan, we have nowhere else to go." "That sounds familiar," I replied. "Except when I had nowhere to go, you filmed it for your followers." "I was wrong," she whispered. "We all were." Solomon slammed his hand on the table. "You think you're better than us? You're just lucky." "Lucky?" I laughed. Lucky was having my husband frame me for infidelity. Lucky was watching my sister-in-law turn my pain into content. Lucky was losing everything and finding out who I really am. I stood up, straightening my eco-elegance blazer. "You know what the difference is between us? When you had power, you used it to destroy. Now that I have it, I'm using it to create." "So that's it?" Anthony asked. "You're enjoying your revenge?" "This isn't revenge," I said, walking to the door. "This is karma, and karma doesn't need my help." "You can't just leave us here," Solomon called out. I turned back one last time. "Actually, I can, and I will. Security will show you out. Oh, and Kiara, feel free to film this. I'm sure your remaining followers would love to see what rock bottom really looks like." As I walked away, I heard Solomon's broken whisper. What have we done? The answer was simple. They'd created their own worst enemy, a woman with nothing left to lose and everything to prove. The elevator doors hadn't even closed behind me when Caitlin caught up. "That was intense. Are you okay?" Before I could answer, alarms blared through the building. Security cameras showed Solomon trying to force his way past reception, wild-eyed and desperate. "You can't hide from me," his voice echoed through the lobby. "I made you. I can destroy you." "Should I call the police?" Julia asked, already reaching for the phone. "No," I said. "Let him come up." "Reagan, are you sure?" Franklin emerged from his office, concern etched on his face. "I've been running from them long enough." I straightened my shoulders. "It's time to end this." The elevator dinged and Solomon burst out, followed by security guards. His expensive suit was wrinkled, his eyes wild. Behind him, Kira and Anthony appeared, trying to pull him back. "Solomon, stop," Kira pleaded. "You're making it worse." "Making it worse?" He laughed manically. "Look at her. standing there in her perfect office with her perfect life. She stole everything from us. I stole nothing, I said calmly. Everything in this building, every design, every success, I earned it. While you were gambling away your inheritance, I was working 18-hour days. While Kiera was mocking me online, I was learning sustainable manufacturing. While your father was helping you forge evidence, I was building something real. Real? Solomon spat. You want real? Tell them about the affair. The room went silent. There was no affair, I said quietly. You know that. You paid the photographer to stage those photos. Prove it, I smiled. Funny you should mention that. I nodded to Julia, who pulled up something on the lobby's giant screen. Remember Thomas, the photographer you hired? He kept receipts and emails, and a very detailed recording of your instructions. The color drained from Solomon's face as his own voice filled the room, discussing payment for staged photos. I've had this evidence for months, I continued. I could have exposed you, ruined you even further, but I didn't need to. You did that all by yourself. You're bluffing, he whispered, but his hands were shaking. The evidence has been sent to the district attorney's office, Franklin added, along with proof of your gambling with company funds. They're very interested in speaking with you. Anthony stepped forward. Solomon, that's enough. We've lost. Lost? Solomon turned on his father. We're Turners. We don't lose. Look around. I gestured to the office. Your name isn't on these walls anymore. Your family's legacy isn't in these halls. The only thing left of the Turner Empire is 3 desperate people trying to blame everyone but themselves for their downfall. Kiara started crying. She's right. We did this to ourselves. Security, I called out. Please escort Mr. Turner to the lobby. The police are probably waiting. You can't do this to me. Solomon struggled as the guards took his arms. I'll tell everyone what you really are. What I really am? I walked closer. I'm the woman who lost everything and built something better. I'm the fraud you tried to create who became genuine success. I'm your karma, Solomon. And unlike you, I earned every bit of my power. As they dragged him toward the elevator, I turned to Kira and Anthony. You should go with him. He'll need family where he's going. Reagan, Kira stepped forward. I truly am sorry. I know. That's what makes this sadder. You knew what he did was wrong, but you chose his side anyway. What will happen to him? Anthony asked. That's up to the justice system now. I suggest you both get lawyers. After they left, the office was eerily quiet. Caitlin hugged me tight. You did it. It's really over. Ms. Reagan, Julia appeared with her tablet. The Paris investors are still waiting, and the press will want a statement about Solomon's arrest. Tell them the truth, I said. A man who betrayed his wife's trust finally faced the consequences of his actions. No need to embellish. The facts are dramatic enough. And the investors? I looked around at my team, Caitlin, Franklin, Valeria, Julia, all watching me with pride and support. Tell them to come up. It's time to show them what real success looks like. As Julia left to make the calls, I walked to the window. Below, police lights flashed as they led Solomon to a waiting car. Kiara stood on the sidewalk, phone finally dark in her hand. Anthony sat on a bench, head in his hands. Are you sure you're okay? Caitlin asked softly. You know what? I turned away from the window. For the first time since the divorce, I really am. Now, let's go make some sustainable fashion history. The elevator dinged, announcing the arrival of the investors. It was time to show the world what a woman could do when she stopped seeking revenge and started pursuing excellence instead. And with that, I declare the Eco-Elegance Foundation officially open. I cut the ribbon across our new Sustainable Fashion Education Center as cameras flashed and applause erupted. The morning sun glinted off the building's solar panels as students began filing in for their first day of classes. Young designers, mostly from underprivileged backgrounds, each given a full scholarship to learn sustainable fashion design. Beautiful speech, Franklin said, joining me as I walked through the classroom spaces, especially the part about turning pain into purpose. Ms. Reagan? A young woman approached, clutching a portfolio. I'm Maria. I wanted to thank you. After my divorce, I thought my life was over. But then I saw your TED Talk and now you're here. I finished smiling. Show me what you're working on. As Maria opened her portfolio, Caitlin rushed over. "Reagan, you need to see this." She handed me her phone. On the screen was a social media post from Ciara, her first in months, but instead of her usual polished content, it was raw and honest. "Today, my brother Solomon was sentenced to 5 years for fraud," the post read. "Our family's fall from grace taught me hard lessons about karma and authenticity. To everyone I hurt with my cruel videos, especially Reagan, I'm taking accountability. No filters, no excuses." "There's more," Caitlin scrolled down. "She's enrolled in a social work program, and Anthony's teaching business ethics at a community college." "Good for them," I said, handing back the phone. "Everyone deserves a chance to rebuild." "Ms. Reagan?" Julia appeared. "The Sustainable Fashion Summit in Paris confirmed you as their keynote speaker, and the investors are ready for the expansion meeting." "Actually," I looked around at the eager students settling into their workstations. "Tell the investors to come here. I want them to see what their money is really building." In the main workshop, design students were already sketching and collaborating. Their energy reminded me of those late nights in my tiny apartment, drawing designs by lamplight, dreaming of something bigger than revenge. "Remember when you said I'd be working retail within a month?" I asked Caitlin, watching a student experiment with recycled fabrics. "God, that feels like a lifetime ago." She laughed. "Look at you now, Forbes cover, Time's most influential, and more importantly, actually making a difference." Valeria joined us, reviewing applications on her tablet. "The next scholarship round has twice as many applicants. Your story really resonates with people." "It's not just my story anymore," I said, walking over to help a student struggling with a design. "Here, try angling the seam this way. See how it creates both style and sustainability?" The student's eyes lit up. "That's perfect. How did you learn to see things this way?" "By losing everything," I told her. "Sometimes you need to strip away all the excess to see what really matters." Franklin called me over to meet the investors, but before I could join him, my phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "Saw the foundation opening online." Solomon's message read, "You've built something remarkable. I'm sorry I tried to destroy you. You deserved better." I deleted the message without responding. Some chapters needed to stay closed. "Ready for the investor meeting?" Julia asked. "Actually, I have a better idea." I turned to address the room of students. "Who wants to help pitch our next collection? Show these investors what the future of fashion really looks like?" Hands shot up everywhere. As students began excitedly sharing their ideas, I saw my reflection in the workshop window, confident, purposeful, free, no longer defined by what was done to me, but by what I chose to do next. "Ms. Reagan?" Maria approached again, this time with a completed sketch. I redesigned my wedding dress into a sustainable evening wear collection. I thought, maybe pain really can become something beautiful. "That's exactly right," I smiled, examining her work. "But you know what's even better than turning pain into beauty?" "What?" "Turning it into opportunity for others." I gestured to the bustling workshop. "Success is sweet, but legacy is sweeter." Outside, the Eco-Elegance logo caught the midday sun, casting a bright reflection across the educational center's entrance. Below it, our new motto shimmered, "Rising higher, lifting others." "The investors are waiting," Julia reminded me gently. "Let them wait one more minute," I said, watching Maria return to her workstation with renewed confidence. "I want to remember this moment. This wasn't just a happy ending, it was a beginning. Not just for me, but for every person who ever needed to believe that rock bottom could become a foundation. And that was worth more than any revenge could ever be."
At the heart of every story lies a decision, a twist of fate that changes everything. I used to believe in the fairy tales of love, trust, and shared dreams. But when betrayal hit close to home, it reshaped my world in ways I could never have imagined. This is a tale of corporate challenges, hidden vendettas, and personal revelations. Dive into a journey that took me from the comforting arms of love to the cold clutches of revenge, and, surprisingly, back to the warm embrace of understanding and redemption. If you've ever been caught in the crossfire of love and ambition, this story might just resonate with you. Join me as I navigate the intricate web of emotions, decisions, and consequences that fate spun for me. My name is Hannah, and this is my story. The morning the betrayal came to light started innocuously enough. It was a Wednesday, the middle of a work week, and my morning coffee had just finished brewing. But with the sound of my phone buzzing on the kitchen counter, my life was about to take a dark, unexpected turn. An anonymous email hit my inbox, and the contents shook my world to its core. "Hey there," it began. "You don't know me, but I thought you should know about your husband's little secret venture. Check the attachments." Curiosity piqued. My fingers trembled as I clicked open the attached documents. What unfolded before my eyes was evidence of my husband, Richard, secretly funneling company funds into his private account. Funds from the company I had dedicated the past decade of my life to. I felt like I was free-falling. A mix of anger, pain, and confusion bubbled up inside me. How could he do this? I whispered to myself. After everything we built together? It didn't take long for the scandal to explode. Word got out, and the board members were swift in their actions. By the end of the week, I was let go, the fall woman for a betrayal I had no part in. Richard disappeared, leaving me to deal with the fallout. Friends who I thought were genuine began to distance themselves. The life I had built was crumbling around me. Months later, after drowning in depression, I decided to rebuild, not for Richard, not for my old life, but for myself. I started at a new company, Fresh Start Tech, and things began looking up. Every night, as I went to bed, I'd tell myself, tomorrow will be better, tomorrow will be brighter. And then, as if by some twisted joke, he resurfaced. Richard, after laying low for months, had the audacity to apply for a position at my new company. And here's the kicker. He didn't know I worked there. As I sat at my desk, reading his application that had landed in my inbox due to a system error, a wicked idea began to form. Karma is about to make a U-turn, I said to myself with a smirk. Pulling up the email, I began typing, "Dear Richard." And just like that, my plan was set into motion. What followed was a series of events that I can only describe as fate's sweetest revenge. I leaned back in my chair, formulating my thoughts. The office was quiet, save for the hum of the air conditioning. The dim lighting from my desk lamp illuminated Richard's resume, making me think of all the possibilities. "Dear Richard," I began. "Thank you for applying to Fresh Start Tech. We're intrigued by your application. We would like to schedule an interview. How does tomorrow sound?" I hesitated before hitting send. Is this really what I want? I asked myself, feeling a pang of guilt. But then, images of my past, losing my job, my reputation, and everything I had worked so hard for, flashed before me. I clicked send before I could second-guess myself any further. The reply came sooner than I expected. "Tomorrow sounds great," Richard responded. "I'm looking forward to it." His signature at the end, with that familiar pompous flair, reignited my determination. I pulled Jane, the HR head, into my office. "You remember Richard, right?" I began, explaining the whole fiasco and my plan to her. Jane, a fierce protector of her employees and a woman scorned once too often herself, was immediately on board. "Let's make him squirm," she said with a wicked grin. The day of the interview, I felt an odd mix of excitement and anxiety. My heart raced as I took my position behind the one-way mirror of the observation room, adjacent to the interview area. Jane was to lead the interview, but I would be watching his every move, every reaction. Richard walked in, looking as confident as ever. The arrogance in his stride was just as I remembered. Jane began the interview in the most ordinary way, asking about his experience, why he wanted to join Fresh Start, the usual stuff. But then, the questions started becoming more personal. "How would you handle betrayal from someone you trust?" she asked, eyeing him intently. Richard shifted uncomfortably, clearing his throat. I believe trust is the foundation of any relationship, be it professional or personal, he stuttered, clearly caught off guard. Jane continued. Have you ever faced a situation where your integrity was questioned? His face flushed, beads of sweat forming on his brow. I suppressed a smirk, taking a sip of my coffee. The show had just begun. He struggled through the rest of the questions, the atmosphere thick with tension. And then, just when he thought it was over, Jane delivered the final blow. We've recently hired someone you might know, she said nonchalantly, sliding a photo across the table. A photo of me, taken during a recent office party. I could almost feel the blood drain from Richard's face. I didn't know she worked here, he murmured, his voice barely above a whisper. Jane leaned in, her face inches from his. Oh, didn't you? Well, she's doing great, by the way, thriving even. Funny how life turns out, huh? The interview ended shortly after. Richard practically sprinted out of the room, his dreams of a cushy job at Fresh Start Tech shattered. As the door closed behind him, Jane walked into the observation room, her face beaming. That felt good, she said, high-fiving me. I smiled, taking a deep breath. It's a start, I replied. But I've got a feeling this is just the beginning. Word quickly spread around the office about Richard's disastrous interview. My colleagues were supportive, their whispers of encouragement mingling with disdain for Richard's audacity. For once, office gossip was on my side. A week later, a colleague named Marcus popped his head into my office. Heard you're a coding genius, he started. I raised an eyebrow in surprise. I did know coding, but genius might have been stretching it. There's an anonymous blog going around about Fresh Start's successes and failures. Some posts have sensitive information that only someone internal would know. My heart sank. It couldn't be. Richard wouldn't be so brazen, would he? Show me, I demanded. Marcus handed over his tablet, and the anonymous blog stared back at me. Sure enough, there were posts suggesting inside knowledge. One post even hinted at my past, with just enough vagueness to stoke curiosity without outright stating facts. I thought back to Richard's technical prowess. He wasn't just good, he was excellent. Tracing him would be a challenge. I need to figure out who's behind this, I said to myself, my determination rekindling. Over the next few days, I dove deep into the virtual world, dusting off old coding skills and seeking help from hacker forums. I was up against a mastermind, but two could play that game. Late one night, as I pored over lines of code and server logs, a breakthrough came. An IP address, hidden behind layers of encryption, pointed to a familiar location. Richard's old office space, which he had converted into a makeshift apartment post our fallout. Now, with evidence in hand, I needed a plan. I called Jane and Marcus, and together, we hatched a strategy. Using the blog as bait, we would create a fake company scandal, something so juicy Richard wouldn't be able to resist posting. Over the next few days, fabricated emails about a potential merger, one that would jeopardize hundreds of jobs, were strategically leaked where Richard could find them. As expected, the story was up on his blog within hours. The trap was set. As the story exploded online, our fictional narrative played out perfectly. Employees, in on the ruse, expressed faux outrage on social media, amplifying the chatter. Every local news outlet was talking about the upcoming merger at Fresh Start Tech. By now, Richard was probably reveling in his perceived success, believing he had inflicted maximal damage. But our team was only getting started. Jane used her media contacts to hint that the whistleblower might be a disgruntled ex-employee with a personal vendetta. The focus slowly shifted from the scandal to the mysterious blogger. Then, Marcus approached me with a wild idea. What if we can tie him up financially too? He mused. I was intrigued. Marcus explained that with Richard's technical expertise, he had to be using a VPN and other premium tools to keep his activities covered. Tools that weren't free. With Marcus's knowledge in cyber forensics, we could trace back his digital payments. The task was daunting, but the duo of Marcus and myself was relentless. Days turned into nights as we scoured the depths of the internet, chasing down the breadcrumbs Richard had unwittingly left behind. One afternoon, amidst a pile of payment gateways and masked transactions, a clue emerged. A single payment to a premium VPN service linked to an account under a pseudonym King Richard used in college. Jackpot. But how would tying him to a VPN payment make a difference? Here's the twist. Using VPNs for malicious activities violated the terms of service of most providers. If we could prove Richard's misdeeds and report them, not only would he lose his cover, but he would also face hefty fines. Gathering all our evidence, we approached the VPN provider. To our delight, they were extremely cooperative, condemning any misuse of their services. Within days, Richard's service was terminated and a significant fine was levied on him. We didn't stop there. We also sent all our findings to other tools and services he had used, ensuring a domino effect of penalties and account closures. Meanwhile, the fake company scandal had served its purpose. The media had grown suspicious, and when no concrete proof of the merger surfaced, they realized they'd been played. Articles began popping up, discrediting the mysterious blogger and his dubious sources. Feeling the heat, Richard finally posted a retraction on his blow, apologizing for spreading misinformation. However, the damage to his credibility was done. His reputation as a reliable source was in tatters. One evening, as I relaxed in my living room, a soft chime alerted me to a new email. The sender, Richard, the content, an apology. He wrote about his regret, his realization of the harm he'd caused, and his desire to make amends. I sat there for a long while, staring at the sincere words on the screen. Part of me wanted to gloat, to revel in the satisfaction of my revenge. But another part, a part I had tried to suppress, remembered the love we once shared. Torn between past emotions and the pain of betrayal, I finally typed a short response. Apology noted. Fresh Start Tech began to flourish in the weeks that followed. Our fake scandal not only brought us into the limelight, but inadvertently acted as free publicity. Applications poured in, sales skyrocketed, and morale around the office was at an all-time high. Yet, amidst the booming success, I couldn't help but feel a void, an emptiness that no amount of professional triumph could fill. After one particularly draining day, I found myself driving aimlessly through the city, lost in thought. The bright city lights, the buzz of traffic, and the distant hum of nightlife created a mesmerizing atmosphere. As I drove, my car seemed to have a mind of its own, guiding me to a familiar location, the coffee shop where Richard and I first met. The place held so many memories, from nervous first date jitters to late-night conversations, planning our future together. Walking in felt like stepping into a time capsule. The same vintage decor, the faint aroma of freshly brewed coffee, and a soft jazz number playing in the background transported me to a happier time. I found a secluded booth at the back and ordered our usual 2 cappuccinos with a hint of cinnamon. As I sipped my drink, the past played before my eyes. I remembered the good times, the dreams we built, and the life we once envisioned. But the lingering taste of betrayal overshadowed all the sweet memories. Lost in thought, I almost didn't notice him. Richard, sitting a few booths away, his face buried in a book. Our eyes met, and for a moment, time seemed to stand still. No words were exchanged, but a million emotions flitted across both our faces. Taking a deep breath, I walked over. "Mind if I join you?" I asked hesitantly. He looked up, surprise evident in his eyes, but he nodded. The conversation that followed was a roller coaster. We laughed, cried, reminisced, and confronted our demons. Richard explained his spiral into deceit, driven by a misguided desire to protect our future. He spoke of his guilt, his nights haunted by remorse, and the realization that he had destroyed the very thing he aimed to safeguard. I listened, my heart warring between anger and empathy. "Why come back? Why apply to fresh start?" I finally asked. He sighed. "It was a desperate attempt to correct my mistakes, to be close to you again. But I realize now that some bridges, once burned, can't be rebuilt." The hours flew by, and as dawn approached, a new understanding formed between us. We may not have a future together, but we could find closure and move on with our lives. Before parting ways, Richard handed me an envelope. "I sold some assets," he began. "This is to cover the funds I misused. It's not much, but it's a start." Opening the envelope, I found a check and a letter detailing his plan to repay every single cent he had taken, even if it took him a lifetime. As I walked away from the coffee shop, the weight on my shoulders felt lighter. The chapter with Richard might be closed, but a new chapter was waiting to be written. Life at Fresh Start Tech progressed at a rapid pace. My revenge plot and the emotional rendezvous at the coffee shop seemed like distant memories. Yet, subtle changes became evident in the way I approached work and relationships. Jane noticed first. "You've changed," she observed one day. "Not in a bad way, just different." She was right. The ordeal with Richard had inadvertently taught me the value of forgiveness and the impermanence of grudges. As weeks turned to months, an exciting project landed on our table. Fresh Start Tech had been approached by a nonprofit to develop a software solution for underprivileged children to gain access to quality education. The stakes were high, but so was the potential impact. I threw myself into the project, channeling all my energy and focus. My personal experiences had taught me the importance of second chances, and I was determined to provide one to these children. One evening, while brainstorming ideas with the team, Marcus made a surprising suggestion. "Why not involve Richard? He has the skill set we need." I was taken aback. Trusting Richard professionally after everything felt risky. But then, the memory of our conversation at the coffee shop and his genuine remorse surfaced. The next day, I found myself dialing Richard's number, an action I hadn't anticipated. His voice on the other end sounded surprised but hopeful. Explaining the project, I offered him a consulting role. He accepted without hesitation. "Thank you," he murmured, the gratitude evident in his tone. The project was a whirlwind. Days were filled with coding marathons, brainstorming sessions, and endless cups of coffee. Richard, true to form, was a genius. His expertise was invaluable, and it became clear that his involvement was crucial for the project's success. As the software took shape, something unexpected happened. The walls between Richard and me, constructed from pain and mistrust, began to crumble. We weren't returning to old romantic patterns, but a new, stronger bond of friendship and mutual respect emerged. The day our software launched was one of profound triumph. Thousands of children would benefit from it, and Fresh Start Tech received accolades for its philanthropic venture. At the launch party, Richard approached me, a bottle of our favorite champagne in hand. "To new beginnings," he toasted. I nodded, clinking my glass against his, and to second chances. The journey had been long and tumultuous. From love to betrayal, revenge to forgiveness, and estrangement to camaraderie. But as I stood there amidst the celebration, I realized something crucial. Life is never a straight path. It's a series of twists, turns, and reroutes, but ultimately it leads us exactly where we're meant to be. Ever feel like you're the outcast in your own family? For years, that was my reality. My sister-in-law, Jessica, with her glamorous life and cutting remarks, always made sure of it. But life has a funny way of flipping the script when you least expect it. When our tech mogul Aunt Mabel passed away, her will didn't just allocate assets. It set in motion a series of events that would challenge everything I thought I knew about family, legacies, and the complex tapestry of relationships. Dive into our tale, where fortunes shift, mysteries unravel, and two adversaries are thrust into a partnership neither had foreseen. It's a reminder that family dynamics are intricate, and sometimes a single piece of paper can change everything. My name is Kylie, and this is my story. Everyone has that one person in their family who seems to delight in making everyone else miserable. For me, that was Jessica, my sister-in-law. The moment I entered the family, she seemed to have it out for me. My husband, David, warned me that Jessica was a piece of work, but I had no idea how much until I met her. At our first family gathering, I tried to reach out to Jessica and strike up a friendly conversation, hoping to make a positive impression. "So, how do you find your work in marketing?" I asked innocently. She glanced me over with a look of disdain. "How do I find it? Well, first, I went to an Ivy League school, then I networked with the right people, but I suppose that's not something you'd know about." She smirked. I was taken aback. My job as a librarian wasn't the most glamorous, but I loved it and was proud of my contribution to the community. "Well, every job has its purpose. We all play our part," I replied, trying to keep the peace. Jessica laughed mockingly. "Right. Some of us play a bigger part than others." She looked me up and down as if appraising a piece of second-hand furniture. Every family gathering after that was a nightmare. From snide remarks about my clothing to downright insulting comments about my intellect, Jessica left no stone unturned in her mission to belittle me. I often wondered why she held such a vendetta against me. David reassured me that it wasn't personal. "She's just like that," he would say, wrapping an arm around me. "Don't let her get to you." Months turned into years, and my patience with Jessica grew thin. "I don't know why David married you," she once sneered during a family Christmas dinner. "You just don't belong in our family." "I think that's for David and me to decide," I snapped back. I often daydreamed of getting back at her, of teaching her a lesson, but I never had the guts or the opportunity to follow through. That all changed with the unexpected passing of David's and Jessica's grandmother, Mabel. I always had a soft spot for Mabel. She was sharp, witty, and incredibly kind to me. Despite her age, she had a spark that made her seem eternally young. Every time Jessica launched into one of her tirades, Mabel would intervene, often with a cheeky comment to shut her down. One evening, before her passing, Mabel and I sat in her cozy living room, sipping tea. "Don't let Jessica get to you," she said, patting my hand. "Some people are just bitter, dear, but remember, the universe has a way of balancing things out." Little did I know how prophetic those words would be. After Mabel's funeral, the family gathered for the reading of her will. Jessica, ever the opportunist, kept hinting at how she was Mabel's favorite and was likely to inherit the lion's share. As we settled into the lawyer's office, I took a deep breath. This is just a formality, I thought, preparing myself for another round of Jessica's gloating. The lawyer cleared his throat and began to read, but as he went on, my eyes widened and Jessica's smug expression started to falter. And that's when things got really interesting. As the lawyer, Mr. Jensen, continued reading out the will, the tension in the room grew palpable. "To my beloved granddaughter, Jessica," he began, and Jessica straightened up, flashing me a triumphant smile, expecting the most lavish part of the inheritance. "I leave my collection of porcelain cat figurines." Jessica's face went from elation to disbelief. Her mouth opened and closed, and for once, she was rendered speechless. "To my grandson, David, and his wonderful wife," Mr. Jensen continued. "I leave my estate, including my house and my savings, amounting to $2 million. David and I exchanged shocked glances. We knew Mabel was well off, but we never expected this. But the real kicker came next. "To my granddaughter-in-law," the lawyer read aloud, emphasizing each word, "I leave my most prized possession, the rights to the patents and royalties of my late husband's inventions." The room went silent. Most of the family, including David, weren't aware of the extent of Mabel's husband's success. His inventions, many of which were medical devices, were still in use worldwide, bringing in significant income. Jessica's face turned a shade of red I hadn't seen before. "This has to be some sort of mistake," she blurted out. Mr. Jensen shook his head. Madam Mabel was very clear about her wishes. Jessica's eyes darted towards me. "You did something, didn't you? You manipulated her." "I didn't do anything," I said, feigning innocence, but I couldn't help the smirk forming on my lips. While I hadn't directly influenced Mabel's decisions, our countless conversations, where I listened, comforted, and valued her, clearly had an impact. Jessica, always too wrapped up in her own world, had never taken the time to genuinely get to know her grandmother. Leaving the lawyer's office, I felt a mix of emotions. Guilt, because while I hadn't wished for Jessica's humiliation, I couldn't deny the satisfaction I felt seeing her taken down a peg. Empowerment, because for the first time since joining this family, I felt like I had the upper hand. And gratefulness for Mabel's unexpected gift. As the days turned into weeks, I began working with lawyers and business consultants, learning about the patents and how to handle the royalties. The income, though significant, was not my main focus. It was the chance to immerse myself in something new, to learn and grow, that truly excited me. Jessica, however, seemed to spiral. Her arrogance and pride were shattered. Family gatherings were no longer about her snide remarks or cruel jokes. Instead, she seemed quiet, introspective. One day, out of the blue, she invited me over for coffee. I was hesitant, remembering all the times she'd belittled and embarrassed me, but my curiosity won out. I arrived at Jessica's opulent home with a guarded sense of trepidation. The grandeur of the place always intimidated me. Marble floors, vaulted ceilings, and ornate chandeliers spoke of a life of luxury and excess, a life that Jessica flaunted every chance she got. She opened the door dressed more modestly than I'd ever seen her. No makeup, hair tied in a simple bun, wearing jeans and a plain tee. It was almost as if she were a different person. "Come in," she mumbled, avoiding eye contact. As we settled in her living room, the tension was thick enough to cut with a knife. "Why did you call me here?" I asked, breaking the silence. She took a deep breath. "I've had a lot of time to think since the will reading," she began. "At first, I was angry, not just at the will, but at myself, at you, at the whole situation. But then I realized that it was nobody's fault but my own." I listened intently, wondering where this was going. It was the first time I had ever heard Jessica show any sign of vulnerability. She continued, "I've always sought validation from external things, my job, my social status, my wealth, but Mabel's will. It made me realize that perhaps those things aren't the real measures of a person's worth." I was taken aback. "Jessica, why are you telling me this?" She hesitated, looking down at her clasped hands. "Because I owe you an apology. For all the years of hurtful comments, of trying to belittle you, of making you feel like you didn't belong. I realize now that it was all just my insecurities speaking." Hearing Jessica's confession, I felt a mix of emotions. The anger and resentment from the past were still fresh, but there was also a part of me that empathized with her. "I spent so many nights crying, wondering why you hated me," I confessed. "But if I'm being honest, part of me also felt a sense of triumph after the will reading, a feeling that justice had finally been served." She looked up, her eyes brimming with tears. I don't expect you to forgive me. I felt it was important for me to acknowledge my mistakes and apologize. As we talked, it became clear that Jessica's cruel behavior stemmed from a deep-rooted fear of not being good enough. In her own twisted way, putting others down was how she coped with her insecurities. Over the next few months, Jessica and I began to form an unlikely bond. It wasn't all sunshine and rainbows. There were still days filled with tension, misunderstandings, and the weight of the past. But little by little, the barriers came down. We started collaborating on some charitable initiatives using the funds from Mabel's patents. Jessica's expertise in marketing and my newfound knowledge of the medical industry proved to be a winning combination. We worked on projects providing medical aid in underserved communities and funding scholarships for promising young inventors. And while the journey wasn't always smooth, it became evident that Mabel's will had done more than distribute wealth. It had sparked a transformation in our family dynamics, especially between Jessica and me. However, just when things seemed to be settling into a new, positive normal, another unexpected twist was waiting just around the corner. About a year after the reading of Mabel's will, David came across an old trunk in the attic of her estate. It was a worn-out chest, heavy with years of dust, and seemed to contain a trove of memories. As he rummaged through the old photographs, letters, and keepsakes, he stumbled upon a sealed envelope addressed to Jessica and me. The handwriting was unmistakably Mabel's. Curiosity piqued, David called both of us over. We gathered in the living room with the evening sun casting long shadows on the hardwood floor. The mood was contemplative as David handed the envelope to Jessica, who hesitated before tearing it open. The letter inside was written with the elegance and eloquence that was so characteristic of Mabel. My dearest Jessica and Kylie, if you are reading this, it means that my time has come and gone. There's something I've long wanted to share with the both of you. Though it's a part of my past, it has a bearing on your present. I was much like you, Jessica. Proud, stubborn, and in constant need of validation. My younger sister, Eleanor, was the family's shining star, beautiful, intelligent, and beloved by all. Envy consumed me, and I made it my mission to overshadow her at every turn. But life has its ways of teaching us. Eleanor fell seriously ill, and it was during her days of suffering that I realized the triviality of my jealousy and pride. We mended our relationship, but the years wasted in pettiness still haunt me. You both remind me so much of Eleanor and myself. I wanted you to know that families can heal, relationships can mend, and it's never too late to start over. Remember, real wealth isn't in possessions or status, but in the love and bonds we nurture. I hope my decisions in the will make more sense now. Cherish each other and always choose love over pride. With all my heart. Mabel. The room was silent, the weight of Mabel's words sinking in. Tears streamed down Jessica's face. I had no idea, she whispered. She always had a bigger picture in mind, David mused, even when we couldn't see it. That evening changed everything. The letter acted as a salve on old wounds, helping Jessica and me understand Mabel's intentions and our roles in her grand design. The pain of the past began to fade, replaced by a sense of purpose and a determination to honor Mabel's wishes. But as life often proves, when one chapter ends, another begins. A few days later, I received a call from a lawyer I hadn't heard of, informing me of an old debt Mabel owed, which now was my responsibility due to the inheritance. The sum was substantial, enough to jeopardize all the charitable projects Jessica and I had started. As I grappled with this new dilemma, Jessica stepped in, offering to help financially. It was her chance to show she'd truly changed, to prove that Mabel's lessons hadn't fallen on deaf ears. The road ahead wasn't easy. We faced legal battles, financial hurdles, and the ever-present shadows of our tumultuous past. But with every challenge we overcame, Our bond strengthened. A few months into our legal battles, Jessica approached me with a proposal. Why don't we merge our resources? Pool our money, hire a team of the best lawyers, and tackle this head-on? We stand a better chance united, she suggested. The Jessica of old would never have made such an offer. But this was a changed woman, and I saw the wisdom in her words. And so, our unlikely alliance became a formal partnership. The news of our joint venture made waves in the local press. Two heirs, once at odds due to a controversial will, now collaborating to preserve their legacy. During this time, we also discovered the depth of deceit we were up against. The supposed debt was more complex than we'd thought. It appeared that certain individuals, seeing an opportunity after Mabel's passing, were trying to fraudulently claim vast sums of money. We hired a private investigator, and the trail led us to an unexpected revelation. The mastermind was none other than a distant relative who felt slighted by Mabel's will, someone who believed he deserved a piece of the vast fortune. With this discovery, our battle took on a more personal dimension. It was no longer just about money. It was about honor, family, and the legacy Mabel entrusted to us. The ensuing court battle was grueling. Our lives seemed to revolve around legal strategies, court dates, and endless paperwork. But Jessica and I became a force to be reckoned with, leveraging our unique strengths and leaning on each other in moments of weakness. One evening, after a particularly challenging day in court, Jessica turned to me. Do you ever wonder why Mabel did what she did? Not just in the division of her assets, but by keeping so many secrets? I thought for a moment. I believe she wanted to teach us something. She had her journey with Eleanor, and perhaps she saw history repeating itself with us. Jessica nodded. I often think about that letter, about how she saw herself in me. It's humbling and scary, but it's also a reminder that we have a choice in how we shape our legacy. Our determination, coupled with the overwhelming evidence against our relative, finally bore fruit. The court ruled in our favor, dismissing the fraudulent claims against Mabel's estate. Our legacy was secure. As the dust settled, our partnership evolved. With the money saved from the legal victory, Jessica and I expanded our charitable projects. We set up an institute in Mabel's name, dedicated to supporting young inventors and providing medical aid to underserved communities. The grand opening of the Mabel Institute was a testament to our journey. Family and friends gathered, speeches were made, and there, at the heart of it all, stood two women who had transformed their animosity into a lasting legacy. As I stood on the podium, looking at the sea of faces, I reflected on the incredible journey. From the heart-wrenching moments after the will reading to the establishment of an institution in Mabel's name, life had come full circle. I think Mabel would be proud, Jessica whispered as we concluded the event. I think she always was, I replied, looking up at the sky, a silent thank you forming in my heart. The journey taught us that real wealth wasn't just in assets or bank balances. It was in the bonds we forge, the choices we make, and the legacies we leave behind. In the end, Mabel's greatest gift to us wasn't her fortune. It was the lessons we learned and the relationship we built. And as the years rolled on, Jessica and I continued our joint endeavors, ensuring that Mabel's legacy lived on, not just in the tangible assets she left behind, but in the love, unity, and purpose she instilled in us. Life seemed perfectly ordinary with my husband, Ryan. Our evening routine, his light snoring, our shared love for board games on Sunday afternoons. But it all changed one night when I caught him taking late-night calls with a woman named Clara. He assured me she's just a friend, but my gut told me otherwise. As I delved deeper, I uncovered debts, poker games, a formidable Russian named Voronov, and a web of deceit. From high-stakes poker tables to the dark underbelly of the gambling world, join me on this roller coaster journey of betrayal, revenge, and the lengths one will go to save what's dear to them. Every marriage has its secrets, but nothing prepared me for this. My name is Amanda, and this is my unusual story. It was a mild Thursday evening. I was curled up on the couch with my cat, Whiskers, engrossed in the latest episode of my favorite crime drama. The apartment was dimly lit, with the orange glow from the television casting shadows on the walls. The muted hum of the city outside only added to the cozy ambiance. But that ambiance was shattered when I heard it. My husband Ryan's phone vibrating on the kitchen counter. I glanced at the clock. 2:37 a.m. Who calls at this hour? I thought to myself. The hairs on the back of my neck stood up. Ryan was in the shower, probably unaware of the call. Curiosity got the best of me. I walked over, and the screen displayed "Unknown Caller." I ignored it and went back to the couch, but the nagging feeling persisted. Over the next few weeks, these late-night calls became more frequent. Each time, Ryan would glance at his phone, his face unreadable, and step out of the room to take the call. Every time I asked who it was, he'd say, "Oh, just an old friend catching up." But there was something off about his demeanor. The confident, easygoing man I knew seemed to be replaced by someone edgy, almost secretive. I felt it, that unsettling knot in my stomach. Suspicion started to creep in. One morning, as I was getting ready for work, I found a tiny note in his jacket pocket. "Meet me at the park, 8 p.m. No name, no explanation. I have to know, I said to myself, anxiety and determination warring within me. I decided to take things into my own hands. Revenge? No, not yet. But if he was playing games, I was ready to play them tenfold. It was a risk, but I knew I needed evidence. So I borrowed a voice-activated recorder from a tech-savvy friend and hid it under our bed, hoping to catch one of their conversations. Days went by, and finally, on a rainy Tuesday evening, the recorder caught something. Ryan's voice, sounding almost desperate. "I can't keep doing this. It's not right. She's my wife. She doesn't deserve this." A female voice, cold and unfamiliar, responded, "You owe me, remember? You either continue or things will get ugly." My heart pounded, blood rushing to my ears. Who was this woman? What did Ryan owe her? So many questions swirled in my head. Revenge wasn't just a fleeting thought now. It was turning into a burning need. I was ready to turn the tables on whoever was trying to ruin my marriage. But first, I needed a plan. The need for answers was overwhelming. Every second that passed was torture, not knowing what secret my husband was keeping, not knowing who this mysterious woman was. My once peaceful home now felt like a ticking time bomb. I had to act. I need allies, I thought, turning to my close circle of friends, Jenny and Mark. They'd stood by me through thick and thin, and I trusted them implicitly. I played the recording to them, and their reactions mirrored my own shock and anger. Jenny, ever the planner, said with a steely look, "We're going to find out who this woman is and what she wants." Mark, the tech guru of our trio, suggested we trace the unknown calls. A few clicks and codes later, we had a lead. The calls originated from a tiny coffee shop downtown, known for its quiet corners and private booths. Dressed in inconspicuous clothing, the three of us decided to stake out the cafe. Hours passed with no sign of the mysterious woman. Just when I was about to give up, she walked in. Her raven black hair, red lips, and striking green eyes made her stand out instantly. She seemed to be waiting for someone, nervously glancing at her phone. Suddenly, the door swung open again. My heart skipped a beat. It was Ryan. Their conversation was hushed, but the tension between them was palpable. I needed to hear their conversation. Thinking on my feet, I took out my phone, dialed the cafe's number, and informed them of a fake gas leak. Panic ensued, and everyone evacuated, including Ryan and the mystery woman. As they stepped out, Jenny, pretending to be a panicked patron, accidentally spilled her coffee on the woman, while I quickly slipped another voice recorder into Ryan's coat pocket. As we regrouped at Jenny's apartment later, we anxiously played back the recording. "She's getting suspicious," Ryan whispered. "You think I care? You know what you have to do," she retorted. Ryan's voice trembled. "This isn't about money anymore, is it? It's about control." She laughed, a chilling sound. "You're in no position to question me." I sat there, my emotions a whirlwind of anger, sadness, and betrayal. But underlying all of it was a burning determination. I needed to confront Ryan, but not before I found out who this woman truly was and what she wanted. As the evening turned into night, Mark made a startling discovery. The woman, it turns out, was Clara, a name that took me back to our college days. Clara was Ryan's ex-girlfriend, known for her manipulative tendencies and vengeful streaks. But why was she back? And what hold did she have over Ryan? I decided then and there that Clara had picked the wrong woman to mess with. Revenge wasn't just an idea, it was a plan in motion. That night, my mind was abuzz with memories of Clara. The extravagant parties she'd throw, the trail of broken hearts she'd left, and the rumors of her involvement in some shady dealings. "I thought she'd disappeared from our lives for good," I mused aloud. Jenny squeezed my hand. "We'll get through this, no matter what she's planning." The next morning, we were back at the coffee shop. Our mission: to uncover Clara's current life. Mark, with his penchant for all things tech, had hacked into Clara's social media accounts. As we scrolled through her pictures, one caught my eye: Clara at a high-end casino, surrounded by well-known criminals. "That's it," Mark whispered, pointing to a man beside Clara. "That's Dmitry Voronov, one of the most feared mobsters in the city." The pieces of the puzzle started falling into place. Clara was in deep with some seriously dangerous people. But how did Ryan fit into all of this? My determination to find answers took us to the casino. It was opulent, with gold trimmings, chandeliers, and an atmosphere charged with anticipation. Clara was there, seated at a high-stakes poker table with Voronov. I'd come prepared. With a wig and a change of clothes, I was unrecognizable. Taking a deep breath, I approached the poker table and asked for a game. To my surprise, Clara didn't recognize me. As the game progressed, I could feel Clara's frustration rising. I was winning, and she didn't like it. Taking a gamble, I leaned in and whispered, "You might be used to having control, but not tonight." Clara's eyes widened, but before she could react, I pulled out an envelope. It contained photos of her with Voronov, evidence of their illicit dealings. "What do you want?" she hissed. "I want you to leave my husband alone," I stated. She scoffed. "You think this is about Ryan? This is bigger than your little love story." I had her attention now. "Tell me everything, or these go to the police." She sighed, defeated. "Fine. Ryan owes me. Years ago, I helped him out financially, and now I need him to pay up. Voronov is my insurance. But trust me, once I get what I want, Ryan will be free." I was taken aback. This was about money? "How much does he owe you?" $50,000, she replied. Mark, who had been listening in, interjected, "Looks like you're having a bad night, Clara. What if we strike a deal?" And just like that, we had a plan. A poker game where the stakes were high and the outcome could change everything. As the evening wore on, our high-stakes poker game drew a crowd. Clara, with her piercing eyes and sharp wit, was known as a force to be reckoned with at the casino. But tonight, she looked rattled. Every time she glanced my way, her confidence seemed to wane. I thought to myself, Is this really about the money, or is there something more? The tension was palpable. You're playing with fire, Clara whispered menacingly during a break. I replied, sometimes fire is the only way to cleanse. Mark, ever the tech genius, had set up a discreet live stream of the game. Thousands were now watching online, enraptured by the unfolding drama. He'd also set up a crowdfund, pitching it as the game to save a marriage. Donations started pouring in. As the hours ticked by, the pot grew larger and larger. Clara was losing, and she knew it. The mounting pressure made her sloppy. Finally, in a dramatic final hand, I won. But it wasn't just about the money. It was about taking back control. I could see the defeat in Clara's eyes, and for a brief moment, I felt sorry for her. But then I remembered all the pain and chaos she had brought into my life. Jenny sidled up to me, her eyes shining. You did it! I hugged her tightly. We did it! We had more than enough to pay off Ryan's debt, with a significant amount left over. I decided to donate it to a charity supporting victims of scams. However, the story doesn't end here. With Clara defeated at the poker table, we had a false sense of security. Little did we know that Voronov wasn't going to let things go so easily. 2 days later, as I was leaving work, a black car pulled up beside me. The window rolled down, revealing Voronov's cold, steely eyes. You may have won the game, he hissed, but you haven't won the war. Chills ran down my spine. I had no doubt he was serious. I suggest you pay back every penny, he continued, or your dear husband will pay the price. I was stunned. This had gone far beyond a simple debt. It was personal, and Voronov was out for revenge. That night, my mind raced as I considered our options. Going to the police seemed the obvious choice, but would they be able to protect us from someone as powerful and well-connected as Voronov? What had Ryan gotten us into? As I lay in bed, a plan began to form. If we were going to get out of this, we needed to be strategic and use the element of surprise. I have an idea, I said to myself, a glint of determination in my eyes. The memories of Ryan's pleading eyes when I found him bound and gagged in that dingy basement played on a loop in my mind. I was running on pure adrenaline as Clara and I made our way to the high-stakes poker table. Voronov's goons kept a close eye on us, ensuring we didn't try to flee or pull a fast one. The room was smoke-filled, and an underlying tension hung thick in the air. Old men with sharp eyes and younger ones with even sharper suits surrounded the table. The chandelier overhead cast shadows that made it seem like we were all part of some grotesque painting. She's just a friend, Ryan's words echoed in my mind. It seemed surreal that all this chaos stemmed from a woman who was supposedly just a friend. Welcome to the table, Mrs. Ryan, sneered Voronov, wearing an obnoxious gold suit that screamed mobster. The stakes? Enough money to clear Ryan's debts and my husband's life. Clara, who had grown up in underground poker circuits, had taught me a thing or two over the past few days. But nothing can truly prepare you for a game where your husband's life is on the line. Chips were tossed, cards were dealt, eyes darted. You got this, I whispered to myself, trying to calm my racing heart. 2 hours felt like 2 lifetimes. Bluffs were called, hands were lost, and the pile of chips in front of me slowly but surely began to grow. With every hand won, Voronov's smile faded just a smidge, replaced by a mounting fury. Clara sent me silent nods of encouragement from the sidelines. The final hand arrived. I had a pair of queens. Betting went around the table. Voronov raised the stakes, trying to intimidate me into folding, but I saw the briefest flash of doubt in his eyes. He was bluffing. I pushed all my chips to the center of the table. All in. The room was silent. Voronov sneered. You think you can beat me with a mere pair of queens? He laid out his cards, a pair of tens. The room erupted in gasps and mumbled conversations. The stack of money in the middle of the table was pushed towards me. Voronov, furious and embarrassed, stormed out with a trail of goons behind him. Clara and I rushed back to the basement. With the debts cleared, Ryan was released, albeit with a few bruises. As we drove back home, the weight of what had transpired began to sink in. Ryan sobbed, apologizing for the mess he had dragged us into. And Clara, the mysterious woman who was supposedly just a friend, turned out to be his savior and mine. It was she who had tipped off Ryan about Voronov's tricks at poker, leading to his debt in the first place. It was a ploy to get back at Voronov for a personal vendetta. But she hadn't anticipated things to escalate this far. Ryan and I needed time to rebuild, to find trust again. And while Clara's actions had indirectly put us in danger, she was also the reason we got out of it. We parted on amicable terms, with her heading back to the poker circuit, hoping to use the winnings to bring down more corrupt players like Voronov. Life slowly returned to its mundane rhythm, but with a newfound appreciation for the ordinary moments. Late-night calls were replaced by late-night cuddles, and I couldn't have been happier. The end of this chapter, however, was just the beginning of another. Ryan and I started attending therapy, both as a couple and individually. We opened a small cafe using the winnings as seed money, naming it Clara's, as a nod to the woman who changed our lives in more ways than one. As for Voronov, rumors say he left the country, his reputation tarnished, but every so often I can't help but glance over my shoulder, just in case. After all, in a game of high stakes, you can never be too careful. Waking up alone in Paris on your honeymoon is an unsettling start to any day. Hi, I'm Lisa. Our Parisian getaway, meant to be woven with dreams and shared memories, took a dark detour into a web of secrets when I found an odd message instead of my husband beside me one morning. Suddenly, our love story intertwined with cryptic clues and shadowy figures from the past. Venture with me into a Paris that hides its mysteries behind every romantic facade and uncover truths that tested not just our bond, but our very survival. So, my name is Lisa, and this is my Parisian story. The glow of the morning sun on Parisian rooftops was breathtaking. I stretched, luxuriating in the satin sheets of our boutique hotel room, reveling in the faint sounds of the bustling Paris streets below. I turned to snuggle closer to my new husband, Alex, but instead of the warmth of his body, I found a cold and empty space. Perplexed, I sat up, scanning the room for any sign of him. His suitcase was still there, clothes thrown casually on a chair from the night before, but no Alex in sight. On his side of the bed, there was a folded piece of hotel stationery. With shaking hands, I opened it. Morning, love. Took a quick walk to grab some fresh pastries for us. Be back soon. I sighed with relief. But then something caught my eye. On the back of the note, written in a shaky script, unlike Alex's usual neat handwriting, "Don't trust anyone." I felt a chill run down my spine. What was this? A joke? But Alex wasn't one for practical jokes, especially not on our honeymoon. Pulling on some clothes, I decided to go down to the hotel lobby. Maybe he was just there, waiting with a basket of croissants, laughing at his little prank. The hallway was quiet, the muted gold wallpaper gleaming softly. I took the elevator, trying to shake off the unsettling feeling. The elevator doors opened to a bustling lobby, but no sign of Alex. I approached the receptionist, a tall woman with raven black hair and striking red lipstick. "Excuse me," I began. "Have you seen my husband? Tall, brown hair, green eyes?" She looked up, her gaze cold and distant. "No, madame. I haven't seen anyone matching that description." I thought back to the mysterious message. Don't trust anyone. Panic bubbled up, and my mind raced. Maybe he'd been kidnapped? But why? We were just two newlyweds from Ohio. Suddenly, I remembered something. A week before our wedding, Alex had mentioned an old college rival, Derek, who had become extremely wealthy and influential after a major tech breakthrough. They had both been in competition for the same job, and Alex had won. Derek had never forgiven him. The pieces started to come together. What if Derek was in Paris? What if he had found out about our honeymoon destination and planned something to get back at Alex? I decided I needed to act. The police would take too long, and Alex might be in danger now. So I thought of a plan. First, I needed to gather information. Derek had a prominent online presence. If he was indeed in Paris, there would be some digital trail. I headed to a nearby internet cafe, blending in with the tourists. Within an hour, I found a photo on Derek's Instagram, standing in front of the Eiffel Tower, uploaded just the day before. My heart raced. This was it. This was the confirmation I needed. But how to get back at him? Then, an idea formed. Derek was a proud owner of a vintage Bugatti, a car he flaunted at every opportunity. I remembered Alex once mentioning that Derek would be devastated if anything happened to it. With newfound determination, I began my revenge plan. I would hit Derek where it hurt the most, his prized possession. But first, I needed to find out where he was staying, and for that, I needed help. I remembered a contact Alex had mentioned, an old college buddy named Ethan who lived in Paris. I decided to reach out to him. Using a burner phone I purchased, I dialed Ethan's number. "Ethan, it's Alex's wife. I need your help." I could hear the surprise in Ethan's voice. "What's going on?" I recounted the story to him, and by the end, he was fully on board. Together, we began our mission to find Derek, save Alex, and deliver the revenge he deserved. The city of love was about to become the city of revenge. Ethan's apartment overlooked Montmartre, giving a panoramic view of Paris. As I explained the situation, his normally relaxed demeanor turned grim. "So, you think Derek has something to do with Alex's disappearance?" "I'm almost sure of it," I replied, "and we need to act quickly." Ethan thought for a moment. "I might have an idea. I know someone who works at a high-end hotel frequented by the rich and famous. If Derek is in Paris, there's a good chance he's staying there. Let's go." With that, we headed to Le Hôtel du Riche, a luxurious palace where the elite of the world stayed. The opulence was evident in the grand chandeliers, gold accents, and lush velvet drapes. Approaching the concierge, Ethan slipped him a folded note discreetly. The man glanced at it, nodded, and then leaned in. "Room 508, but be careful." With the intel in hand, our next step was to get to Derek's room unnoticed. Using Ethan's knowledge of the hotel's layout, we took a service elevator to the 5th floor. As we neared room 508, we could hear muffled voices. Pressing my ear to the door, I strained to make out the words. It sounded like Derek, and he was arguing with someone. "Shouldn't mess with me. This is too risky." That voice, I gasped silently. It was Alex. Taking a deep breath, I looked at Ethan. "We need a plan," I whispered. Ethan nodded. "First, let's find out where he's parked his Bugatti. We can use that as leverage." A few discreet questions to hotel staff and a generous tip later, we found out the Bugatti was parked in an underground hotel garage. But we needed to make sure Derek knew we had access to it. Pulling out my burner phone, I sent a text to Derek's known number. "How much do you think your precious Bugatti is worth?" Almost instantly, a reply buzzed in. "Who is this?" With a smirk, I sent a photo of the car keys, which Ethan had skillfully swiped from the valet. "Want these back? Release Alex." The message was bold, perhaps too bold, but it was a move I was willing to make. My husband's safety was on the line. Minutes felt like hours as we waited for a reply. Finally, it came. Meet me at Pont des Arts at midnight. Come alone. I looked at Ethan, determination burning in my eyes. I have to go. This is the only way. Ethan tried to dissuade me. It's too dangerous. He's clearly unhinged. But I was resolute. I can't risk Alex's life. We'll play Derek's game, but on our terms. As evening turned to night, the plan was set. Ethan would watch from a distance, ready to intervene if necessary, while I would face Derek head-on. The Pont des Arts, known as the Lovelock Bridge, was an ironic choice, but it would soon be a symbol of our triumph over betrayal. The Pont des Arts was bathed in a soft orange glow from the surrounding streetlights, creating an eerie yet romantic setting. The Seine flowed below, its waters glimmering in the night. I stood at the center of the bridge, my breath visible in the chilly night air. The usually crowded spot was deserted, save for a few distant lovers sharing whispered secrets. Suddenly, I heard footsteps approaching. Turning, I saw Derek's silhouette emerging from the shadows, with Alex, my husband, tied and gagged, stumbling along beside him. "Derek!" I shouted, my heart pounding. "Let him go!" Derek just smirked. "Give me the keys first." I gripped the Bugatti keys tightly, considering my options. But the desperation in Alex's eyes made the decision for me. I held out the keys. "Release him, and they're yours." Derek paused for a moment, a sinister smile playing on his lips. "You always were so predictable, Lisa." As he reached out for the keys, a soft whistle broke the tension. Suddenly, from the shadows, Ethan lunged at Derek, trying to take him by surprise. But Derek was quicker than we anticipated. A scuffle ensued, both men wrestling each other, dangerously close to the edge of the bridge. "Lisa, run!" Ethan shouted, grappling with Derek. I hesitated for a moment, then made a break for it, pulling Alex along with me. But Derek, in a fit of rage, managed to push Ethan off him and lunged at us. In that heart-stopping moment, a brilliant idea flashed in my mind. I remembered the Lovelocks couples attached to the bridge. Scrambling, I quickly locked a heavy chain around Derek's wrist, then snapped the other end onto the bridge's railing, effectively tethering him. He tried to free himself, but it was too late. Ethan, recovering quickly, pinned him down. Derek's arrogant sneer was now replaced with a look of pure rage and disbelief. "What do you want, Lisa?" he growled, struggling against his restraints. "Justice," I replied coldly. "You thought you could play with our lives? Think again." Ethan called the police, and within minutes we heard sirens approaching. Derek was arrested, and Alex, once he was freed and safe, wrapped his arms around me, pulling me close. "Thank you," he whispered, his voice choked with emotion. I was so scared. "We're a team," I whispered back, tears glistening in my eyes. "Always." Derek's luxurious Bugatti? Well, let's just say it made a generous donation to a local charity. And as for the infamous Lovelock, it became a symbol of our victory over betrayal. We returned to our hotel, exhausted from the ordeal. Our suite overlooked the Eiffel Tower, and the city lights twinkled, a stark contrast to the events that had transpired. Alex was quiet, lost in thought, staring out at the view. I walked over, placing my hand on his shoulder. "I'm so sorry you got dragged into all of this," I whispered, my voice heavy with guilt. He turned to me, brushing a strand of hair behind my ear. "Lisa, none of this is your fault. Derek's vendetta was beyond any of our control." Despite the reassurance, the weight of the night bore down on me. I took a deep breath, trying to push back the tears. "I just wanted a perfect honeymoon." Alex smiled gently. "Well, it's definitely been memorable." We both laughed, but our laughter was a mask for the pain and shock of what had unfolded. A few days later, after giving our statements to the police, we decided to head to the Louvre. Surprisingly, the art and history offered a much-needed distraction. As we walked hand in hand through the museum, I felt the tension slowly dissipate. It was then, in the midst of the crowd, that I saw a familiar face. A woman with raven black hair, dressed in a sleek red dress. She was the receptionist at the hotel on the day Alex disappeared. My gut told me she was involved. She locked eyes with me, a smirk playing on her lips, and disappeared into a nearby gallery. I tugged Alex's arm, nodding in her direction. We need to follow her. The chase led us through intricate hallways, past masterpieces, and into the Dinan wing. She was quick, always just out of reach, but she left a trail of subtle clues, a dropped handkerchief, a distinctive scent. Suddenly, she turned a corner and we lost sight of her. We entered a dimly lit room and the door slammed behind us. Panic surged as we realized we were trapped. The room was filled with mirrors, each reflecting our alarmed expressions. "I think we've just stepped into a trap," Alex whispered, his voice tense. From one of the mirrors, the woman emerged, stepping into the room as if by magic. "Indeed you have," she purred, her eyes cold and calculating. "Why are you doing this?" I demanded, fear and anger coursing through me. She smirked. "Because, dear Lisa, the game isn't over yet." "Who are you?" Alex's voice was steady, though I could feel his hand gripping mine tighter. Every instinct told me this was the moment everything came to a head. "My name is Isabel," she purred, circling us with predatory grace. "I was Derek's partner, in more ways than one. When you humiliated him, you humiliated me." "But it's not fair," I exclaimed. "Why are you taking revenge on us? We were just defending ourselves." Isabel paused, taking a deep breath. Her cold demeanor broke for a split second, and I saw the anguish behind her eyes. "After your prank, Derek became the laughing stock of our community. The humiliation was too much for him. He took his own life yesterday." My heart sank. I had known Derek was deeply embarrassed, but I hadn't known the true depth of his despair. The weight of his teeth pressed on me, making it hard to breathe. I had no idea," I murmured, guilt gnawing at me. "Of course you didn't," Isabella hissed, regaining her icy demeanor. "But that's why we're here. It's time to finish what Derek started." I stared at her, trying to piece together the situation. "And what would that be? Another elaborate game?" She smirked. "Exactly. What do you want?" Alex's voice was firm, his protective instincts kicking in. Isabel approached a grand mirror, its frame ornate and gold. "Behind one of these mirrors lies a door that will lead you to freedom. Behind the others? Well, let's just say they won't be so forgiving." The realization hit me like a ton of bricks. This was her revenge, a deadly game of chance. "I'll give you 5 minutes," Isabel declared, her eyes gleaming. "Good luck." She vanished as mysteriously as she'd appeared, leaving us surrounded by mirrors that seemed to mock our desperation. Each reflection twisted our features, showing the gravity of our situation. Alex and I quickly tried tapping on the mirrors, listening for hollow sounds. The minutes ticked away, and my heart raced faster with each passing second. "Think, Lisa," I whispered to myself. Then, it hit me. The dropped handkerchief. The scent. Isabel wanted us to follow her. She wanted the game to be fair, in a twisted way. I approached a mirror to the far right, one that seemed to reflect the room with more clarity than the others. As I touched its surface, the mirror swung open, revealing a passageway. "This is it!" I shouted. Alex and I dashed through, just as the room behind us erupted in a cacophony of shattering glass. We didn't stop running until we were back in the crowded hallways of the Louvre. As we caught our breath, the weight of everything that had happened began to sink in. But amidst the chaos, there was one silver lining. Our relationship had been tested in the most unimaginable way, and we had come out stronger. We left Paris shortly after, our honeymoon forever marred by the events that unfolded. But as we began our lives together, one thing was certain: we could handle anything that came our way. Years passed, and the memories of that fateful trip began to fade. Yet, one evening, a package arrived at our doorstep. Inside was a framed photograph of us at the Louvre, taken by a stranger. On the back, a note simply read, "For the memories, Isabel." The game, it seemed, was never truly over. Ever thought you knew everything about someone, only to find out their life was just the tip of an unimaginable iceberg? I used to live a life of routine, family, friends, and the occasional bump in the road. But nothing prepared me for the day my husband, Mark, vanished. His unexpected return unveiled a world of secrets, dangerous syndicates, and betrayals close to home. My family was hurled into a whirlwind adventure, making us question everything we once held true. If you're curious about how a seemingly ordinary family navigated the dark underbelly of crime, deception, and revenge, I invite you to delve into our journey. What you'll find might just change your perception of the people around you forever. My name is Anna, and this is my story. It was a crisp Tuesday morning when I woke up to find the left side of my bed cold and empty. Initially, I assumed Mark, my husband of 7 years, had woken up earlier for a jog or to get some breakfast. However, as the day wore on, I noticed his phone, wallet, and car were still in their usual spots. The unsettling feeling in my gut grew stronger. By evening, panic had completely taken over. Neither his workplace nor any of our friends or family had seen him. The kids were restless, continually asking, "Where's Daddy?" Holding back tears, I always replied with, "He must be busy, he'll be back soon." However, soon turned into weeks, and weeks turned into months. No calls, no texts, no notes, no nothing. Just pure silence. The police were of little help. With no evidence of foul play, they marked him as a voluntary missing person. My heart shattered. How could the love of my life, the father of our 3 children, leave without any explanation? Every day was a challenge. I tried to be both a mother and father to my kids, all while battling the betrayal and anger boiling inside me. How could he do this? Why? Was our love not enough? I constantly thought to myself. But amid the anger, there was a glimmer of hope, a burning desire for closure, and an inkling of revenge. If he had chosen to desert us, I wasn't about to let him forget us so easily. Fast forward to a year later. I had returned from a long day of work, kids in tow, when I found a letter on our doorstep. My heart raced as I recognized the familiar handwriting. It was from Mark. "Dear Anna, I don't expect forgiveness. I don't even know if I deserve a chance to explain myself. But if you're willing to hear me out, meet me at the old tree house we built together tomorrow evening at 5 p.m. Mark." I read the note over and over, each time feeling a mix of anger, pain, and hope. The audacity of this man to disappear for a year and then waltz back into our lives as if nothing happened. "Oh, he's going to get what's coming to him," I muttered to myself. The kids sensed something was off. "Mom, what's that? Is it from Daddy?" My eldest, Max, asked, his eyes wide with a mixture of hope and fear. I hesitated, thinking of the best way to shield them from more pain. "It's nothing, sweetheart. Just an old friend," I replied, avoiding his gaze. That night, sleep eluded me. My mind raced with different scenarios. Was he in trouble? Was he remorseful? Or was this another cruel trick? And then, there was the burning desire for revenge. The pain he inflicted on our family was immeasurable. I wanted him to feel a fraction of the anguish we had been through. As dawn broke, a plan began to form. I was going to give Mark a taste of his own medicine, make him realize the weight of his actions. But first, I needed to meet him, to hear his side of the story. The day dragged on. Every tick of the clock felt like an eternity. And as 5 p.m. approached, I was a mix of anxiety, rage, and anticipation. I left the kids with my neighbor and headed to our old treehouse. As I approached the clearing, I saw a figure standing by the tree. It was Mark, but he looked different, older, wearier. He had lost weight and had a ruggedness to him that I hadn't seen before. "Anna," he whispered as I approached, his voice filled with sorrow. "I thought you'd never come." Little did he know that I was there with a plan, a purpose, and revenge was its name. As I walked closer, Mark's eyes welled up with tears, but I was unmoved. The hollow look in his eyes did nothing to soften the stone that my heart had become. The kids' endless nights of crying, their questions about their father, the bills piling up, and my sleepless nights flashed before my eyes. "Anna, I'm so sore." I cut him off. "Sorry? You think saying sorry now will fix everything?" My voice trembled, not just with anger, but with the weight of the suppressed emotions from the past year. "Where were you, Mark? Why did you leave us?" Mark looked down, taking a deep breath. "I can't justify my actions, Anna. I made a terrible mistake, but I had my reasons." I laughed bitterly. Reasons? What possible reasons could make a man abandon his family without a word? He looked up, eyes searching mine. "It's not as simple as you think, Anna. I had no choice. I was trying to protect you all." I scoffed. "Protect us? By leaving us alone, vulnerable and broken? Some protection, that is." Mark hesitated, taking a moment to gather his thoughts. "Anna, I got involved with some dangerous people, and I became privy to information I shouldn't have known. Staying would have put you and the kids in danger. I thought distancing myself would keep you safe." Willie, a part of me wanted to believe him. The anger and pain were too overwhelming. "So you played hero and left us to fend for ourselves? You could have at least left a note, a message, something. Instead, you left a gaping hole in our lives." Mark's voice cracked. "I know, and I can never make up for it, but I'm here now, and I want to make things right." That's when my plan for revenge kicked in. "All right, Mark, you want to make things right? Here's what you're going to do." I explained my plan to him, detailing every step. I could see the dread in his eyes, but he didn't object. My revenge was simple but effective. Mark was going to experience the same loneliness, fear, and uncertainty that we had faced for the past year. For the next month, Mark would live in the treehouse, cut off from the world. No phone, no contact, no comforts. Just him and his thoughts. He would get a taste of what it felt like to be isolated, abandoned, and forgotten. Every weekend, I would visit him, not to comfort, but to remind him of the pain he had caused. That night, I left him in the treehouse with just a blanket and some canned food. As I walked away, I couldn't help but feel a pang of satisfaction. This is for the kids, I thought to myself. He needs to understand the pain he caused. Over the next few weeks, I visited Mark as planned. Each time, he looked more forlorn, more broken, the weight of his mistakes pressing down on him. But each visit also rekindled a spark, a connection we once shared. While I wanted him to feel the pain, I also found myself wrestling with the love that still lingered deep within me. One Saturday, as I approached the treehouse, I found Mark feverishly scribbling in a makeshift journal made from scraps of paper and tied together with twigs. He looked up, eyes filled with a mix of pain and determination. "Anna," he began, "I've been writing, reflecting on everything, and while this punishment is hard, it's given me time to think, to realize the gravity of my mistakes. I want to share this with you, my reflections, my regrets." His words struck a chord, and I found myself torn between my thirst for revenge and the lingering love I still felt for the man before me. The coming weeks would prove to be a journey, not just for Mark, but for me as well. The path of revenge had taken an unexpected turn, one that I hadn't foreseen. Week 5 was when things started to shift. The plan was clear: make Mark feel what we felt. But every weekend, as I climbed up to the treehouse, I was met with not just a broken man, but a transformative one. His writings painted vivid imagery of our past, our love, our dreams and hopes, all intertwined with his deepest regrets. He shared stories from his journal, and each entry was like a window into his soul. One particular entry stood out: Day 28. Every day I wake up to the chirping of birds, and as the cold seeps through my bones, I'm reminded of the warmth I willingly left behind. Anna, I dreamt of our first date last night, the laughter, the stolen glances. Waking up to this reality feels like a nightmare. I understand now, more than ever, the magnitude of my mistakes. Reading his words, the anger inside me began to dissipate, replaced by a myriad of emotions. Memories flooded back. Our first date, the birth of our children, the life we built. The weight of my revenge suddenly felt heavy on my shoulders. One evening, as I approached the treehouse, I found Mark engrossed in a sketch. He was drawing our family, using charcoal from the burnt-out logs of his small campfire. The raw emotion captured in that rudimentary artwork was palpable. "Anna," he said without looking up, "I've realized that living without you and the kids, even for this short period, is a fate worse than death. I've felt a loneliness that's deeper than the physical isolation of this treehouse." His voice trembled. "Every day, I see the kids playing in the backyard from this tiny window. Hearing their laughter, yet not being able to hold or comfort them, has been torture. But it's a pain I've earned, and a pain I needed to understand the depth of what I put you all through." My heart ached. The revenge that once felt so just and warranted now felt misguided. But there were still so many questions left unanswered. The doubts remained. Why did he get involved with these dangerous people? Why not confide in me? One day, he handed me a folded piece of paper from his journal. It was a letter addressed to those very questions. "Anna, I never meant for any of this. It started innocently, a business venture with an old college friend, but it quickly spiraled into a web of deceit and danger. They had ties to criminal syndicates, and I inadvertently became a witness to their illegal activities. I overheard plans, dangerous ones. And when they realized I knew, they threatened our family. My instinct was to protect you, but in my panic, I chose flight over fight. Every day I spent away was agony. The guilt consumed me, but the fear of those men finding you held me back. I thought staying away would keep you safe. Now, I understand it was the worst mistake of my life." Mark. As the weeks passed, my visits to the treehouse became less about reminding Mark of his errors and more about rekindling our bond. My revenge had set us on a path neither of us had expected, a path of understanding, healing, and redemption. But the journey was far from over. Mark's revelations about his entanglement with the criminal syndicate shocked me to the core. The heavy weight of fear and insecurity from the past year now had a name. But the more pressing question was, if he was willing to come back, were they still a threat? "Mark," I whispered one chilly evening, the words escaping through trembling lips. "If they're still out there, aren't we all in danger?" He gazed out from the treehouse's tiny window, his eyes scanning the shadows beyond our garden. "I've thought of that too," he admitted. "But I made sure to leave them with a strong impression that I wouldn't spill their secrets. They believe that if they leave our family alone, their operations remain safe." The very idea that we were bargaining our safety against the secrecy of a criminal empire was terrifying. But Mark had a plan. He'd had a lot of time to think after all. I reached out to an old contact, someone trustworthy from my college days, now in the FBI. I've sent him everything I know, anonymously, of course. If things go according to plan, they'll be rounded up soon, and we won't have to live in fear. As days turned into weeks, Mark's information began to make waves. Without revealing his identity, he had tipped off the authorities about several ongoing operations. News started trickling in about arrests and raids on syndicate hideouts. The web of crime started to unravel, and we dared to hope. But revenge has a funny way of looping back. My actions, designed to punish Mark for his absence, had unexpectedly made him a cornerstone in dismantling a criminal empire. And while we reveled in our newfound hope, we knew that the conclusion was imminent. I began to notice unfamiliar cars parked at a distance, men in sunglasses watching the house. Paranoia grew. Had they connected the dots? Was Mark's cover blown? One afternoon, as I played with the kids in the garden, an unknown number flashed on my phone. Answering it, I heard a distorted voice. "You think you can hide from us? You'll regret it." Fear clawed at me. I looked up to see Mark gazing down from the treehouse, a somber expression on his face. He had overheard the threat. But amidst the fear, a thought gnawed at me. What if we turned the tables one last time? Together, we hatched a plan. We'd bring the danger to our doorstep and confront it head-on. Using his contacts, Mark arranged for law enforcement to be on standby. And then, we baited the trap. Mark sent out a message, one that indicated he had more information that he'd release unless they backed off. The evening was tense. We fortified the house and waited. The quiet of the night was broken by the sound of approaching vehicles. Headlights flashed, silhouettes approached, and then all hell broke loose. But the syndicate didn't expect what awaited them. As they made their move, floodlights illuminated the garden, blinding them. Law enforcement agencies swooped in, catching them off guard. It was a confrontation, but it was one-sided. In the aftermath of the takedown, Mark was heralded as an unsung hero. His anonymity preserved, he played a pivotal role in bringing down a major crime ring. But that was secondary to our primary victory. Our family, once fractured and lost, was whole again. Yet, as I laid in bed that night, one burning question remained. Was our journey truly over? Or were we merely at the cusp of another adventure? Only time would tell. The next few months were a dizzying whirlwind. As a family, we took a collective decision to move, seeking anonymity in a smaller town far from our past haunts. It wasn't just about evading remnants of the syndicate, but also about starting fresh, free from the specters of our past. Life in the countryside was different, calmer. The kids adapted quickly, losing themselves in the vast fields and forests. Mark took up a teaching job in a local community college, and I started a small online business. Our once fractured lives were mending. There were moments, though, when the weight of our shared history would crash down on us, especially on quiet nights, when the howling of the wind echoed the haunting memories of our past. One evening, as Mark and I sat on our porch, watching a breathtaking sunset, a black car pulled up in our driveway. The sight immediately filled me with trepidation. Could they have found us? I thought. But then, a familiar face emerged. It was Brian, Mark's college friend and our FBI contact. "We're not fully in the clear yet," Brian began, his face grave. "Some of the syndicate's members evaded arrest, and they're regrouping. They might not know where you are now, but they're looking." Mark's face darkened. "I thought we were done with this." "We almost are," Brian reassured. "We just need something more, a final piece of evidence to put them away for good. The leader, the one truly pulling the strings, has been elusive. We believe he's overseas, but we have a lead, a meeting point where they plan to regroup." Mark's eyes narrowed. "What do you need from us?" Brian sighed. "A bait. And that bait is you, Mark. We'll ensure your safety, of course. If this works, it'll be the end. Forever. I felt a shiver run down my spine. The thought of putting our family in danger again was unbearable. But there was also the promise of finality, of permanently ending the nightmare that had shadowed us. With a heavy heart, and after many discussions, Mark agreed. It was time for one last game of cat and mouse. Brian's team meticulously planned the operation, ensuring layers of protection around Mark. The chosen location was an old warehouse, and I insisted on being close, hiding in a surveillance van with Brian. The night of the operation was agonizing. From the van, I watched Mark, a lone figure, waiting. Hours dragged on, until finally a limousine pulled up. Out stepped a figure, face hidden by shadows, but the unmistakable aura of power evident. As they conversed, Brian's team prepared to strike. But suddenly, alarms blared. The warehouse was rigged. A cloud of smoke enveloped the area. Through the haze, figures clashed, shots were fired. My heart raced. Where's Mark? I thought, panic flooding me. After what felt like an eternity, the smoke cleared. Bodies lay strewn around, but Mark was standing, a bit disheveled, but alive. And beside him, handcuffed, was the syndicate leader, a face I never expected. It was Mr. Thompson, our neighbor from our old life. Brian emerged from the van, a victorious smile on his face. "We got him," he said, clasping Mark's hand. The following months saw the syndicate crumble. With their leader in custody and most of their operations exposed, they were finished. Mr. Thompson's arrest made headlines, revealing his double life as a seemingly benign neighbor and a global crime lord. Our life returned to its peaceful rhythm. The scars of our past remained but faded with time. We became local heroes, with our story of resilience and love turning into the stuff of legends in our small town. The past's shadows receded, and as we moved forward, we held on to each other tighter, knowing that together we could overcome any storm. And so, our tale comes to a close, not with an ending, but with a new beginning.